Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The Prime Minister has come back from Europe with a deal, and it will now be up to the public as to whether the UK remains a member of the EU or whether we opt for life outside. Later this afternoon, David Cameron will be presenting his case to MPs. Each side will be trying to convince as many voters as possible to back their cause, which has led to some unlikely bedfellows. The Prime Minister, David Cameron, will lead the campaign to stay in, together with the Chancellor George Osborne. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn also wants to stay in, as does the SNP's Nicola Sturgeon. Campaigning for out, Mayor of London Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, the Justice Secretary, have found themselves alongside UKIP's Nigel Farage and George Galloway, former Labour and Respect MP. The Prime Minister says the UK will be safer and stronger in a reformed EU and that his deal strengthens British sovereignty. Boris Johnson says remaining in the EU would lead to an erosion of democracy, with the UK unable to control its own affairs. Voters will decide for themselves soon enough. The question on the referendum ballot will be, should the United Kingdom remain a member of the European Union or leave the European Union? The Prime Minister says he'd like the referendum to take place on Thursday, the 23rd of June. The date of the referendum and various rules about the administration of the poll still need to be confirmed by Parliament. The Electoral Commission needs time to choose which two organisations will officially campaign for Remain and Leave and receive public funding to do that. This so-called designation period could last 6 weeks. There also must be a referendum period when the formal campaign takes place and various spending rules apply. That must last a minimum of 10 weeks. That means campaigning could begin in April. With me now is the Conservative MP Nadhim Zahawi, who last night revealed he would vote to leave the EU. And we're joined by the Labour MP Chuka Umunna, a former member of the Shadow Cabinet. He is campaigning for Britain to remain in the EU. Welcome to both of you. Nadhim Zahawi, that was a surprise. I thought you were one of those who would be opting to remain in the EU.
Well, I've always instinctively wanted to do the best possible within the EU. 2 weeks ago, I thought we were there. 80% of the deal was there. The last 20% is always really hard. That's in any negotiation, I can tell you, the last 20% is the toughest bit. And I thought actually that the EU elites would listen to David, and David, was trying very hard. Unfortunately, it is with a heavy heart that I look at the deal now. I just don't think they've listened enough, and I don't think it is a reformed Europe. That's my difficulty with it.
Right. Well, which bit did he fail to actually secure, as far as you're concerned? Because you're, a loyal MP in the main to David Cameron. I'm sure he'll be very disappointed. Do you feel a sense of betrayal then?
No, I think that David Cameron, one, was the man who gave us the referendum, so the whole nation should be grateful to David Cameron for delivering that. Two, importantly, we're going to have these differences. Michael Gove has come out, Boris Johnson, others will come out. Many of my colleagues and friends are on the other side of the argument. Let me give you one specific example. So on financial services, we're giving up a veto to allow the Eurozone countries, the currency countries, to try and fix their currency. It's broken. Unemployment is running at 25%, 50% amongst youth.
But we're not part of the euro,
No, I hear you. But just hold on. And it's right to back them on this and maybe give up that veto. But what are we getting in return? What we're getting is, if whatever decision they make, it hurts our financial services, the best we can hope for is an emergency brake and a discussion. They will discuss the pain they will then deliver upon us.
Right.
That, for me, I don't think is enough. I think I'd like to see better protection for our financial services. I would like, if we can. If we can't, then maybe it's better that actually we go it alone.
And you've just come to this decision in the last few weeks. I mean, rightly or wrongly. I mean, not that long ago, you said divorce would be worse for everyone. You really have changed your mind and flip-flopped, you might say.
Well, divorce is painful, as you know, right? But
personally, I don't. But yeah,
you don't. But we've had many friends, and let's hope none of us go through that. Chuck is getting married soon, or
no, I'm not planning to get divorced.
Let's get back to the EU.
But you know what? There's a world out there beyond that. So the next day we'll wake up, and the channel will still be there, and trade will still be there, and we can still do well in the world. We should be confident of what we can do.
Right.
80% of our economy is service-based. I bought a business in Germany. We couldn't use the same accountancy package in Germany because there isn't a single market in services.
Do you take the arguments that are being put forward by Nadhim Zahawi that actually we will have a better chance of improving our business, our financial services industry if we come out of the EU?
No, I disagree, and I think actually Nadhim takes a very downbeat view on what British ministers and prime ministers have been able to achieve in the past and what they can going forward. I mean, take, for example, financial services, which Nadhim was talking about. In the main, British prime ministers have been able to marshal a majority behind the British position on the EU Council on financial services. And actually, the only time that we've recently lost a vote was when George Osborne was voted down, when the EU was trying to bring in regulations to end the exorbitant bonus culture we see in the City of London. But the bigger reason...
What does that do?
Nadhim, hang just a minute.
It's a perverse incentive because then bankers got salary instead of bonus, which is short-term instead of long-term, where you can judge them on their performance.
Nadhim,
Terrible decision.
The irony of that particular decision is once it was passed by the European Council, Mark Coburn, who was a city minister under the last Parliament, and George Osborne sought to take ownership of what the European Council did and boasted on what they were going to do.
But Chuka Umunna, the important point, let me just put the important point, hang on, that actually Nadhim's
and that Nadhim's talked about is this issue of sovereignty. Now, the thing about this issue of sovereignty, you listen to what people who are arguing for us to leave argue now, which is, we can't determine any of our own affairs. And I just remember sitting in the last Parliament, watching the last Tory government implement the trebling of tuition fees, we had the different benefit cuts, we had the NHS reorganisation, all those things that the EU had absolutely nothing to do. In fact, of the 121 Acts of Parliament that were passed in the last Parliament, just 4 of them were implemented to pass EU legislation.
Right.
The majority of this stuff was determined domestically. Now, to the extent that we need to...
All right, but let's just stick to financial services because you are talking more broadly there. But on financial services, are you saying that the City of London will always be protected from decisions that are made within the Eurozone, by countries in the Eurozone, who will not be looking to pass favourable laws and decisions that will help the City of London? And surely if we came out, we would be able to protect our financial services much more effectively.
I don't think so, because this goes to a broader point, which is that ultimately, if we want to continue to trade with the EU free trade area...
They will trade with us.
Hang on just a moment.
We're the 5th largest economy in the world.
No, Chuka, let Nadhim come back on that.
Let me finish my sentence on that, because the point I'm making is if you look at... I mean, one question for Nadhim is, what is the model? Because if you say, look at Norway or Switzerland, which trade with that area, they pay to be part of that area, they're subject to all the rules of that area, but because they're not in the EU, they're not round the table
to determine
those laws.
Well, let Nadhim answer that. What is the model you want to see?
Well, we're not Norway or Switzerland. We're a much bigger economy. We're the 5th largest economy in the world, soon to be the 4th largest economy in the world. 80% of it is services, but also we sell goods and we manufacture. The automotive sector, Nissan, JLR, all sell across Europe. Europe will want to trade with us. We buy more BMWs and Mercedes from Europe than they buy stuff from us, right? So ultimately, the world is not going to stop. This scaremongering that everything's going to stop on the 24th of June because they're going to stop working with us is simply not true. They will trade with us. America does very well in Silicon Valley, but where I've got experience, or in Wall Street with the rest of the world.
But the argument is not that they won't trade with us, it's the terms on which they trade. That is the point.
Let Chuka put that point.
So you're saying that we would be allowed to basically have all the benefits of being in the club without being in the club, without paying into it. That is unprecedented. Why would they, to take your discourse, which is basically that we get run over, we can't do anything in the club, somehow paradoxically, when we leave the club, they're going to allow us to do whatever we want.
First of all, the club needs real reform, right? They're not reform.
No one disagrees
with
that.
The European elites are just not.
But shouldn't you do that from within the club rather than on the outside?
I would say the way you do it is to say, listen, this is not good enough, right? We want to help you, but you just haven't actually even thought seriously about reform. Look at what they do on the Strasbourg Circus. We've got in a world of austerity, where they've got youth unemployment at 50%, they've got 2 parliaments spending hundreds of millions on buildings, when George Osborne and the Cabinet Office, Matt Hancock's cutting back on buildings before them.
All right, but Nadhim
the last
Zahawi,
5
you
years was about
accused Nadhim,
working hard to cut back the size of the government. Brussels does the opposite.
There's a real irony
Gentlemen,
here,
hang on.
Go.
You accused Chuka Umunna there of Project Fear and scaremongering. But John Whittingdale was quite honest when he said yesterday there will be an element of risk.
Of course there will.
And I
said the same thing in my article.
Right, there will be an element of risk.
There is.
You don't know exactly what sort of deal you will actually get. But saying to you, the scaremongering of losing 3 million jobs if we came out of the EU is just that, scaremongering. It's not actually true.
I don't think there's anything wrong. I think it's perfectly legitimate.
You repeated the claim.
To point out the risk. I haven't said that 3 to 4 million jobs will go, but I've said that 3 to 4 million jobs are undoubtedly linked to us trading with the EU. And by the way, it isn't just what we stand to leave. It's actually what we stand to gain. We know we need to rebalance our economy by investing more in skills, R&D and other things, in infrastructure. A whole load of that inward investment comes from the EU. And also, if we deepen the single market, and you were talking about services, we need to do that in digital. Independent research shows that this could create an extra 700,000-800,000 extra jobs in the UK.
Just on that point,
it isn't just a question of what you lose. It's also
on that point briefly.
On that point, I built a digital business. It is ludicrous to say that we'll do better just being with Europe. All these great digital unicorns coming out of Silicon Valley don't need the EU to be able to do well globally. Digital business can do well all over the world.
But
we will do the same. We have to be confident of Silicon Roundabout, which George Osborne built. We have to be confident of our economy. We can go out there and do well with all the world.
You need a big home market to scale.
We need to end it there, and I need a couple of yes/no answers. Hilary Benn told me yesterday he won't be campaigning alongside David Cameron, but you will be.
Well, I've already shared a platform with Damon Green. I very much doubt that I'll be asked to share a platform with the Prime Minister. But
do you think Labour should be, though? Do you think Hilary Benn should be sharing a platform with the Prime Minister? Just yes or no?
I think it's for each and every single Labour politician to make a decision.
All right.
Vice versa, I suppose. If
Nadhim,
you were to share a platform
are you
with
happy?
George Galloway,
No, I won't. No, I've said it in my article. I will not share a platform with George Galloway or Nigel Farage.
All right. Thank you both.
I've been getting away with it.